Good afternoon. I would like to call to order the January 4th meeting of the Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust. The next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. They're in your packet. Does anybody have any questions or concerns? If not, is there a motion to approve the minutes? We have a motion and a second. Please vote. And it passes unanimously. The next item on the agenda is consent docket. There are a number of items. We do have an individual that is signed up to address us on item 3I of the consent docket. So let's pull that off the consent docket. And Mr. Grubb. Yeah.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, with regard to item 3I, in the regular course of development, the City of Oklahoma City requires developers to extend water mains and wastewater mains across the proposed development, pretty much universally. And this requirement is reflected plainly in the recital section of the Memorandum of Understanding, specifically with regard to the 13th recital, page 2, fourth from the bottom. Section 4 of the memorandum also requires the parties to the memorandum to faithfully abide by the ordinances, laws, and regulations of the city, the state, the United States, and all other applicable agencies. So the requirement for the bringing over of the utilities is also reflected in the covenant section of the Memorandum of Understanding, sections 1A through C, specifically the requirement that all city Oklahoma DEQ requirements be met, etc. The memorandum significantly also requires conformance to the partial release of a right-of-way, a grant of a replacement right-of-way, design, construction, and surface use agreement filed of record in the Office of the Oklahoma County Clerk at Book 10247, page 1566, what the memorandum refers to as the 2006 agreement. Now, my client's concern, Mr. Chairman, is this memorandum also contains a termination provision at page 6, section 7, which allows either party to terminate upon 90 days notice to the other parties. In the event the developer, in this case the city of Midwest City, should have insufficient funds or would not be appropriated sufficient funds to maintain these agreements. This clause appears to be boilerplate. It is not long, but it has significant practical ramifications, as Midwest City could unilaterally terminate and render hundreds of acres of adjacent land undevelopable, for want of a better way to put it, because it does not have the necessary utility connections. So my client, Heartland and Cattle, LLC, owns the parcel adjacent to this development to the east. My client intends to develop his parcel in the future, and in fact has rezoned in 2020 his parcel from R1 residential to PUD 1750, which was approved by the City Council. So should Midwest City terminate, the practical effect for my client is inverse condemnation. He's left without utilities, he's left without easements, and both of those things are necessary for his development. Mr. Chairman, even if no termination should occur, the timetable for the completion of the utility extension that's reflected in the Memorandum of Understanding would serve to delay any development of the adjacent property until at least Q3 of this year. Specifically, August 31st, 2022 is referenced with regard to the wastewater installation. There is no timeline for the extension of the water main. It seems like an oversight to my client. The memorandum also nebulously requires Midwest City to grant onto Oklahoma City extended water and wastewater mains and all necessary easements. for those mains, together with any further easements that may be necessary for the 25-foot construction buffer identified in the 2006 agreement. Since the nature and the scope of the Midwest City development, the sports complex, is known, the necessary easements should be readily ascertainable. If my client's parcel is not served by easements, let alone the utilities necessary for its own development, that leaves them in a position, because the MOU leaves out the necessary easements, or it leaves that language ambiguous. It would be further damaging to my client's development. So in the event of a termination, importantly, the easement requirements do not survive, nor does the requirement that utilities be extended across the parcel survive. From an engineering perspective, there are several other considerations that make the memorandum untenable, and I'd like to turn it over to Mark Grubbs, the professional engineer, to discuss the disparity between the plans and the MOU's exhibits, well, with specific regard to pipeline depth considerations, consent to the pipeline operator, et cetera, if the trust will allow.
I've got some questions. So this is on the south side of 29th Street, the old hospital tract that's out there, and they're going to develop and put a parking of some type and run the utilities across the property, which will benefit your client's property on the east side of the. And so if they don't do the development, if they falls apart somewhere along, those lines don't get extended, you're no further off, you're no worse off than you are today, right?
The concern is grounded in the memorandum's termination provision. This is a sports complex. It's not exactly like a residential or a commercial application. This was originally to be a hospital complex. That PUD was amended, and the memorandum reflects that the only thing that was required by the city was the extension of the utilities. And if those utilities are not extended, it puts my client in a position where he does not have those mains to hook into for his development. So it's a barrier to his highest and best use of his land.
I'm still quite confused. Right now, you don't have any access to the utilities, and he's going to develop the property, which will provide you access to the utilities, and it appears you want to play hardball with him. That's what I'm sensing. Am I off here?
Yes, the development as built already exists. It's not like it's a planned. Mr. Grubbs can probably explain better than me.
Mark Grubbs, 1800 South Sarah Road, on behalf of the client in concern. So this is the City of Midwest Cities developing the property. It's their athletic facility. It's 95% complete construction. Typically, you're going to be required to extend your water line and your sewer lines across the properties at the time of construction prior to CO. So the memorandum of understanding is so that it's allowing City of Midwest City to construct those later. If it was terminated for some reason due to that termination clause, then our client, who owns property east of this, not directly adjacent to, wouldn't be able to extend the sewer because the sewer extends across the low within that property. Does that clarify?
So the only thing this MOU does is extend the time period that they need to install the sewer line. If they terminate, they don't have that extension. It has to be installed immediately. That's our development standard. This MOU only gives them that time extension for the sewer only, not the water, just the sewer. And the sewer has to be extended all the way to the southeast property line at the lowest point. And it has to be installed at a depth that will satisfy upstream development.
So the water's already been constructed, Crystal?
I was just trying to verify that.
We did not give them an extension of time for the water main. The water main has to be installed prior to opening the development.
I know they were permitted to tap their own water main across the street.
Yes?
It's our understanding that they have not completed that water line either, and they're ready. They're nearing their CO.
Well, if,
And I'm unaware of any even plans being submitted for it at this time.
Plans actually have, I know the plans have been submitted.
okay. They did not get an extension on the time for the water main. The water main has to be installed pursuant to our development standards. The only extension through this MOU is the time to install the sewer line. That allows them time to design and construct. And the time, the extension terminates in August of this year. So they have to have it designed and installed by August of this year, or they're in violation of the MOU. If they terminate the MOU, they have no time extension. They are in violation of our standard development standards. That's redundant, but we have standard language that requires that. And so they will be in default of our development standards. So the purpose of the MOU is just to give them that extension of time for the sewer line design and construction.
And Mr. Browning, if the obligation to extend the utilities were to survive termination, or if a CO would not issue until those extensions had in fact occurred, that would go a long way to assuaging my client's concerns. It's just, as written, it appears Midwest City, acting as the developer in this instance, is able to say simply, we don't have the funds to do this, and to abandon the development to the detriment of my client.
If they don't install the water main, they should not be issued a CO. If they don't get the sewer line installed by, I think, August of this year, they will be in default of the MOU. If they terminate the MOU, they will be in default of our development standards immediately.
I mean, I think the best thing, just for,
Water has to be in prior to the opening of the Midwest City Sports Complex.
The issuance of the CO.
if you have concerns, the best thing to happen here is to sit down with staff and let's answer questions, because we're very good at that and we're very prepared. And you wouldn't have any problem sitting down and meeting with them after this meeting, correct?
No.
And that's more than anything the reason for being here today. If we couldn't agree on the amendments as we sit here, at minimum, further discussion about these issues, specifically with regard to the engineering issues, is warranted. And consideration of those matters is important to my client prior to the ratification of the memorandum.
It's also important to us.
And it doesn't sound like a CO is going to be issued, to me.
And if they don't have the water main in, you're exactly right. If they don't get the sewer main in by August, then they'll be in default of the MOU.
Can you guys just hang around for a few minutes after this meeting, and we're more than happy to sit down and talk with you if need be?
Yeah, we'd be happy to. All right.
Just one point. Mr. Browning and his staff and my client and I, we had all met about this prior, and we're aware that the memorandum was going to come out. Mm-hmm. As the memorandum was being drafted, we had followed up on it several occasions, which I believe we may have seen. Don't quote me on this. We may have seen a draft at some point in time, but prior to it going to the city of Midwest City, to be executed, we didn't notice prior of the termination agreement that was in there. That termination clause, I shouldn't say termination agreement, that termination clause is what struck the concern of my client. And it went to the city of Midwest City. It's executed by the city of Midwest City. Now it's here, so we are showing up expressing our concern of that termination clause. Because in fear that if the city of Midwest City runs into an issue such as, because their building's already constructed, but currently the way the memorandum of understanding is set up is it specifically refers to this release, this Cimarron release agreement. The Cimarron release agreement refers to this green easement area here. The memorandum of understanding shows the sanitary sewer extension going here. Well, that easement release does not allow for that alignment in the memorandum of understanding. And therefore, and also unknown things such as that pipeline depth that may not allow the sewer to go across it without lowering of that pipe is some concern there. So if they ran into an issue where they had to lower that pipe for some reason and couldn't afford to do that, then they have this termination clause within this memorandum of understanding that could possibly, City of Midwest City could say, we don't have the funds to build that. They already have a building, they already have a CO. What happens in that instance?
Turns into a legal matter because now they're in default of our development standards. And our engineers will be reviewing their design before they ever start construction, reviewing and approving to make sure that it has proper depth to serve the upstream properties. In addition to that, we're asking them to install an 18-inch pipe rather than an 8-inch pipe, and we're paying the difference. So we have skin in the game here.
Understand.
We fully intend to serve those upstream properties.
We just know that this is our only path through there to get there.
I
That's
certainly
our-
understand.
And he owns hundreds of acres, so he's trying to protect his interests.
Our standards are designed to make sure that development is not stymied by these kinds of things. And we have not circumvented those standards by this MOU.
Well, and to be clear, my client is uninterested in stymieing this development or the MOU for that matter. He just wants assurances that he is going to be able to develop his parcel as planned, and he is not going to be in a position where his parcel is rendered practically undevelopable. So,
Understood.
thank you.
Are there other items off the consent docket the trustees wish to discuss? Is there a motion to approve the consent docket? Please vote. The motion passes unanimously. Next up is the concurrence docket. There's one item on it. It's a construction project with the City of Oklahoma City, and there are no AQUIT funds involved. Is there a motion? We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Trustee Stonesifer. Oh, you got it.
And it passes 5-0. There are no emergency contracts for consideration today. Items for individual consideration. Item A is a presentation on federal low-income household water assistance program. Mr. General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have Mallory Gotcher here this afternoon to talk about an opportunity for us to enter into an agreement with the Oklahoma Department of Human Services to provide low-income funding, low-income customers access to federal funds to help them with their water bills. So, Mallory?
Good afternoon. So in 2021, the American Rescue Plan Act and the Consolidated Appropriations Act established a new one-time program, the Low Income Household Water Assistance Program, say that 5 times, to support funds for water and bill pay assistance for water and wastewater for our customers. The program is going to be administered by the Oklahoma Department of Human Services, and the agency is going to be responsible for determining the customer eligibility and make sure they meet all income requirements, and to provide water and wastewater payment directly to the utility provider on behalf of customers. So the Oklahoma DHS reached out to water providers across the state to ask for participation and to partner with us to ensure that residents have access to these funds. And so this contract just establishes the requirements, the purpose, and the terms for the agreement for the program. And so funds will have to be administered by September 30th, 2023. And so this is just another good opportunity to provide funds for our customers for bill pay assistance and financial assistance options. And I'd be happy if you have any questions about the program.
Does it specifically say how much money is available?
I don't have that number. They distributed it to all the states, and I think they're trying to figure out which utility providers are going to actually participate or not. But I can find that out.
Well, as a follow-up at some point.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Participate so they could pay our bills?
What was the question?
The question was, will we be doing some PR on this?
Yes, we have planned already some news releases and information, and OKDHS has also been promoting it to customers who already participate in their programs. Yep.
Other questions?
All right, thank you.
Hearing none, is there a motion for approval on item A2? A motion and a second, please vote. That's approved 5-0.
Thank you, Mallory.
Items from trustees, anything this afternoon? General manager reports?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an update on this status report for you all related to the lake level at Draper. The lake is about 5 feet down right now. That's the lowest it's been in several years. The reason for that is we've constructed new balancing tanks along the Atoka pipeline, and that was a planned project in conjunction with the new pipeline. And we need to connect those balancing tanks to the existing pipeline, so we had to turn it off. And so because of that, the pipeline has been off for a couple of months. We're going to turn it back on the end of this month, and then we have to turn it off one more time in March. But we plan to fill Draper back up, so I don't want anybody thinking that the lake is dropping. In addition to that, in southeast Oklahoma, we're not getting a lot of rain down there. So those lakes are down about 3.5, 4 feet. But Draper's down about 5 feet right now. And under the lake management plan, the lakes are supposed to be within 1 foot of one another. And so we're still in compliance with the lake management plan, but we'd like to get more water in Draper sooner than later. So as soon as we can turn the pipeline back on, we will, and we'll fill the lake back up. Be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions? Chris, all right. Hearing none, there are no citizens to be heard. We are adjourned.
That was an interesting